Hi, this is Kathy with Inking It Up with Kathy.blogspot.com, and today I'm going to show you how to do this watercoloring technique, which will allow you to create an image that doesn't look like it was stamped ahead of time. And then we're going to use the timeless textures from the Occasions Mini catalog to create this background here. And inside of the card we'll have the background here, and we'll just give it a finishing touch on the crumb cake striped ribbon as well. So let's get started, and we will start with creating our flower. So I'm going to be working with a piece of the shimmer white cardstock. It works really well with watercoloring techniques. And so you can either use it or the watercolor paper. And for this technique, I really like the shimmery white. I'm using Sahara Sand ink. You could either use Sahara Sand or even So Saffron if you don't have this. You want as light of a color as you can. And we're going to just ink up. Oh, let me tell you what stamp sets we're going to be using. So what we'll be using is the Butterfly Basics, and we're going to be using this flower here from the Butterfly Basics stamp set. And then we'll be using this image, and the splatter image from the Timeless Texture stamp set. So we'll go ahead and ink up the flower in Sahara Sand and stamp that here. Now, as you can see on that, there is, you can see an outline of the stamped image, but as we use an aqua painter and our inks, that's going to start to disappear. So we'll take first the Melon Mambo, and I'm going to go ahead and squeeze it to put some ink into the lid. And get started, and all I'm going to do is first start by laying in some color. Ooh, that aqua painter has way too much water in it. Should have checked that before I got working. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to start laying in some base color on each of these. Let me see if I can zoom in for you a little bit more. There we go. And you can really see what I'm doing. So I'm just putting the color in, and I'm not worrying about trying to hide those lines yet. I'm just wanting to put some color into the petals themselves. These ones are kind of a challenge to decide which parts you want in. Okay, so now we're going to come back in with our pink, and we're going to now have a little bit more intensity, and we're going to follow along that stamped line. Again, I need to dry off my... Get a different aqua painter. This one seems to be giving me too much water. I have one that does and one that's really pretty good about how much. So let's try this one. Okay, so I'm going to, there we go, do some more intense coloring right along the outside edge. And the stamping will start to disappear behind that darker color. And then I'll start pulling some of that color in toward the center. not quite so noticeable. And this is need to take your time with this technique, but it turns out really pretty in the end. So again, we're going to pick up some intensity and draw along the outside edge. Just keep picking up a little bit darker amount of ink and follow along those lines. And then move the color into the center. Just like that. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and get the Pear Pizzazz ink and do the same thing, squish it to put it into the lid and clean my aqua painter off. Pick up some color and start again. Just laying the color in lightly. We don't want to start out intense at first. I think that was a little too dark right up there to start with, but it'll be okay. So you can touch on your grid paper or your scrap paper when you first pick up ink to kind of get rid of the most intense portion of it, and then you'll get this lighter amount of ink to go onto your project. So we'll keep doing this. And there's a little flower that I need to come back and catch. It's hard to tell sometimes which things are supposed to be flowers and which are supposed to be leaves on this stamp. Now the artists who create these stamps also help you in that these little lines here means that that area should probably be a little more intense in color. So that will help you to know where to darken things as well. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out my lines again with my brush. And then I'll start putting some darkness in where they have those lines. And I'll continue to move along this set of leaves and do the same thing. Okay, and I'll come back when I've got most of the outline done here so that you don't have to sit and watch all of this. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, and I've got everything outlined, so now I'm going to start adding in that darker coloring. So I'll start with anywhere that they've got their shading, because that's always a good clue that that part should be darker. And then I will kind of do my own, giving it some depth in different areas. Where things are too uniformly one color. And then finally, I'll come back in with a marker, a Daffodil Delight or a Hello Honey marker, and just give the center of my flower some color. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom out, back out, and we'll finish making this card. So we'll set that aside to dry. And the next piece is the outside piece, and I'm going to be using the Sahara Sand again, Pear Pizzazz, and Melon Mambo inks. And I'll be using the Timeless Textures stamps. So the first one will be in Sahara Sand, and that is this circular looping. And I'll just kind of stamp in various locations with that. Now this center section doesn't really need to be stamped because it's going to be hidden. The leaf flourish, I'm going to stamp off once before I stamp on here because I don't want it to be too intense. So I'll work my way pretty much around the outside edge with this, just remembering to stamp off. Just like that. And then the little splatter will be in the Melon Mambo. And I'm going to stamp off with that, and I can actually get 2 or 3 stampings before I need to put ink back on again. I can even get 4 in. And that looks good. So that is the outside piece. And then for the inside of the card, I'm going to stamp the loops again here. I'll stamp the flourish, the leaf flourish, stamping off once, the corner coming out just like that, and then finally the splatters again a few times there. And then finally I'll stamp on this crumb cake striped ribbon. I'll get the flourish, and this time I'm going to do full intensity. I won't stamp off first. I'm going to stamp over here on the left hand side. Just like that. Now to assemble this card, on the inside, you'll just take your piece of crumb cake and wrap it around just like this, and secure it on the inside of a piece of Pear Pizzazz card, just like this. And then on the outside, this piece will go onto a piece of Melon Mambo, just like that. I have a piece of the organdy ribbon that will go here, and then a piece of the crumb cake striped ribbon that will layer right on top of it right there, and that will go right onto, wrapped around and placed onto the card like that. And then I have my flower, and that will be raised up onto a piece of Pear Pizzazz and then raised up with dimensionals. And then finally I have one of the little botanical jewels that I placed here. So that's the assembly of that card, and when you're all done, this is how it looks. Hope you enjoyed that.